Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. I just got a big waft of incense in my throat. Like drank it up. Like people smoke marijuana. I just did that with incense. I just choked on it. Hare Krishna. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Thursday's Srimad Bhagavatam study. Good morning.
Good morning.
They're calling me NPR. They're calling me NPR Raghu on the board today.
You've been subdued in the earlier introductions.
I was a little subdued this morning. A very internal morning. How are you, Guy?
Well, I'm fine. You know, I'm assuming maybe one of the reasons you're subdued is the news that we received overnight.
Oh, yeah. A dear friend, teacher, guru, Kadamba Kanana Swami, Prabhu Maharaj left his body last night. I think at Govardhan Hill, matter of fact.
That's what I believe so.
And I met Maharaj maybe like the second time I went to India, like in 1991. I went back to India, and he was running the temple there. It was before he was a Maharaj. In his later life, he became a sannyasi, but he was one of these very strong. He's Dutch. He's like a very strong personality, a very strong leader, very strong speaker, and he was just one of these people that was just like strong. If I had to pick one word, he was just a strong person. And then when he became late, I didn't really talk to him for years, and then next time he reappeared in my life, he was a Swami, he was a teacher, a guru, and he was like unleashed basically on the world. We went from like running the temple in Vrindavan to unleashed on the world, and he's just a powerful speaker. Like people hear him and they just want to transform their life. And then he got cancer, and he I really admire him because he's like, he wants to, I think his theory was he wants to leave his body spreading the holy name. And that's how I want to leave this world too. I want to leave my body spreading the holy name. And to me, it was a glorious life for him. I don't really have lamentation. When I hear about him, it's my only lamentation is I'll never get to see him again. But it's quite inspiring. His life, his living, his teaching, and his leaving was all quite inspirational. What's your feeling?
I agree with what you're saying. Like, I also met him in the early 90s, I suppose, in Vrindavan, and he was the president of the Vrindavan temple. I think that sounds like it might be really wonderful.
No way. I mean,
job.
It's like so much management and dealing with, the 80s Vrindavan, the 80s in India was all criminal,
Yeah, well, the point I was going to make was, it wasn't an easy job. That'd be actually one of the most difficult jobs I can imagine. It's this, you're in charge of this kind of international center, and you're doing it in India, and you're doing it Vrindavan for all of its spiritual glory. The outer surface of it is there's a lot of heavy stuff that goes on in there, and to do his job, he actually had to stand up a bit to the underworld, there.
Mm.
And it even got him shot. You remember that, right?
Yep.
So what you're saying is true. He was strong both in terms of his courage in doing all that service, and strong in his just very focused spiritual. Most of us, our minds go here and our minds go there, and we're lax in this way and lax in that way. But he was very strong in his determination to maintain his service and his mind, in a very pure way.
Mm.
And you're right. After that, after he left that service, I don't remember exactly when now, but he took sannyas, became renuncius, put on the orange cloth, lived as a celibate monk, and became a very powerful speaker. And of course, he was also known for his kirtans. He had a very.
That's right.
My earliest memories of him were actually like singing the Mangalarti, the early morning songs in the temple in Vrindavan,
Yeah.
with that unique. His voice reminded me of like who am I trying to? Bing Crosby or something like that. It was like he had like it was his voice. It sounded like a professional singer in that sense. He had a kind of like a way that a crooner, I suppose you would call him. He had a beautiful voice, and he would sing often. I have many. I have very distinct memories of being in the before the altar in the most beautiful temple in existence. The temple in Vrindavan. Standing before the altar with him, singing at whatever 4:30 in the morning or whatever, singing Vibhavari Shesha, singing that song in a very beautiful way. But yeah, he was a person that he fully gave his life, and his life was glorious, and his death was glorious in Vrindavan, surrounded by devotees, chanting the holy names, and consciously, courageously saying, "Okay, I'm ready to go," and moving on. So I place my head at his feet. I offer my respects to him, and his memory will remain special in my mind and in my heart.
Yeah. Well, all right. You want to dive into a nugget, my friend?
Yeah. Well, how about let's check in with Mara over here.
Okay.
Good
Mara.
morning.
Good
morning.
morning.
Mara.
We have a back to recovery group meeting at noon today, and there's an asana class tomorrow with Josh Kane at 10:30 a.m. for our Patreon members.
Okay.
All right. This is by Viktor Frankl. He wrote that great book. Yeah, he wrote that great book I read.
You read it?
Yeah,
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search for Meaning.
When did you read that?
I read that maybe 20 years ago.
Oh, what
not
brought
not
you
recently. Huh?
What brought you to that book?
Oh, it's just a famous book on spirituality and how to deal with
Psychology.
probably the worst like torture you could ever go through is you watching people that you love go through a concentration camp, and how he came out the other side. And I'm sure it affected him, but he dealt with what he got. And
he was a psychiatrist, right? Going in. So
yeah.
he was a person that already had a lot of contemplation on psychology and on therapy and so on. So he was viewing that most horrific circumstance of, I believe he survived 4 Nazi concentration camps.
Jeez.
Viewing it through the lens of a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And then he came out and he wrote the book called Man's Search for Meaning. How did you like the book?
I loved it. It's been an inspiration to me, actually. Here's what he has to say.
Okay.
The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. Love this, right? Mm-hmm. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, right? This is
maybe
the material
our only freedom, maybe our first and last in a sense.
Yeah, it's like the only thing that we have is the ability to how I'm going to react to this. Oftentimes we can't change the circumstance. We can't change what happened to us. All I can change is how will I react to this? And really, we really have two options. I'm either going to put it on a scale here right now. On one side of the scale, I can become angry, I can become bitter, and I can become hateful. We see this all the time. We see it in personal relationships, we see it in relationships between families, between countries, between nations, between religions, over like trite nuances of thought, etc. It's horrible. I can become angry and bitter and hateful, or I can choose to react differently. I'm not going to let even the people that are punishing me hate. That is the big one for me. It's like when you've been tricked into hating somebody or some group of people for the self-betterment of the world, you lose. You've already lost because now you're filled with hate. So if I'm on a cause or a mission to improve society, the world, my family, my health, it's a religion, whatever it is, if I hate some other group because of that, then I'm hateful. It's that simple. I become a hateful person. What's your takeaway, sir?
Yeah, certainly. And in other words, you've become part of the very problem that you're pointing out when that happens. And you can argue no, but this is directed in the right in the right direction. My hate is good hate because my hate is
Right.
focused on evil.
My hate
Of
is
course,
good.
that's what everybody thinks, you know. And
Right.
it's not to say that uh, one side may not be more truthful than the other. That may be, but there's a wisdom to what he's saying. It's a wisdom that ties into the yoga teachings that go back, you know, so many centuries, and it's something that, of course, especially in the age that we're in now, we have to be careful with, because people are so quick to people don't think very deeply always. They don't want to think deeply. So when he's saying what he's saying, it reminds me of another quote, another nugget from another writer. Are you familiar with James Allen?
And no, I'm
James Allen.
Woody Allen. I know Woody Allen.
Okay.
I know Allen Ginsberg.
Okay. Well, James Allen was a British philosophical writer known for his inspirational books and poetry, and he was a pioneer in the self-help movement. So his best known work is As a Man Thinketh.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
that's a
As a
man
Man
thinking.
Thinketh,
I have
right?
that
So
little book.
I think a lot of the
I have
self-help
all these books and I never read them.
well, I think that book, you know, kind of like was one of the original books that a lot of the, you know, in a later in history, a lot of the self-help kind of speakers would draw from his writings. But he wrote this. He said, "Men are anxious to improve their circumstances, but are unwilling to improve themselves.
Oh, God.
Therefore, they remain bound." Right. And to me, this is a similar kind of statement, right? I may or may not be able to affect my external circumstances. This realization, this call to focus on one's own inner self, it's not necessarily saying turn your back on the world, but it is recognizing that there are certain things we can't change, and even if there are things that we apparently can change, still, without doing this work, whatever we do it doesn't have the same kind of lasting meaning in it. And often the solutions that we create, the circumstances that we change for the good, will just boomerang back in another way. You know, in other words, that becomes kind of like a whack-a-mole thing. Like, I make this change, but then the problem appears somewhere else. But one thing that we can know for sure, you know, that has deep, lasting, meaningful effect, is when someone really tries to improve themselves. When one, you know, this is where it all has to come from. And so I appreciate it. If there's any, you know, it's Viktor Frankl's statement is so important because of his circumstances. You know, generally people will say, well, if someone says something like this, you know, well, there's one thing you can't take away from me. That's how I choose my attitude. Well, what about what the Nazis did? Well, he came out of the concentration camps, you know.
Right.
His saying that, you know, I need to look within and choose my attitude carefully. It's not denying evil, and it's not denying a proper response to evil. But his point is correct. It's the one thing that I can't change. Now let's take a look at Kadamba Kanana, who just passed away. You know, there was an external circumstance that he couldn't change. you know, and that is that this body is going to become diseased, it's going to grow old, it's going to die, you know. He accepted that. And what he did was he approached it with a very powerful, positive spiritual attitude. I'm okay with it. I'm not fearful of it. I can accept it. I'm not going to
Hmm.
sit here and moan about it. I'm not going to look back and reminisce on the past trying to escape it. I'm not going to enter it with trepidation of where it may lead. He had knowledge, he had faith, and he was able to approach it with the best, you know, with that freedom to choose his attitude towards it and make it a truly glorious way
Hmm.
of departing.
Yeah, in that circumstance, it was great. I mean, it was great. It was a noble way to leave this world.
Yeah.
And that was a choice, and he chose that. When I heard, you know, he's not getting any more treatments, he's going to fast until he leaves this world, I was like, this man is inspirational.
Yep.
This man is inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, another thing I was thinking about this whole thing and your ability to choose, it's like we get so much wrapped up into the religion. You know, we don't want to love our religion more than loving the people whom the religion was given to. You know, we love our
Right.
thing. This is it's like all these rules that we get, these injunctions, these, you know, they're made to give us like this joy, not take away our joy. You know, and as a practitioner, we're not here to like punish others who are not following the rules. It's like, we want you to buy this religion. And sometimes you feel like these people are trying to give you religion. It's like they love their religion more than they love you.
Right.
And it's the opposite. And Lord Chaitanya, you know, spoke of this. You know, we have to really actually care about these people. You know, Christ spoke about this, you know, and Viktor Frankl spoke about this. And, you know, Christ was on the cross, and we have so many great saints who've gone through so much hell, trauma, you know, beatings, you know, martyrdom, etc. And they didn't hate anyway. You know, they actually were compassionate for the people that were the perpetrators. And most likely a good therapist or a good 12-step group would say, you know, you got to come to terms with that pain, with that trauma, or else you remain stuck with that hate. All right. I can't move forward in this world looking in that rear view mirror, like holding on to something that happened to me.
All right.
All right, man.
So we got one more verse left in chapter 6 of the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam.
All right, let's do it. Do it. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narotamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before we start in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet.
You ready, subdued Raghunath?
Subdued. Okay, I thought Mara was going to call it out there.
No.
Where are we on?
Chapter... Reading from Canto 5, Chapter 6, Text 19.
Text 19.
Do you want me to read or do you want to read?
No, you can read today.
Okay. Text 19, the final verse. This is Sukadeva Goswami speaking to Maharaj Pariksit, who himself has a few days left to live. And this is his last verse about Rishabdev, the Vishnu incarnation that came and lived as a king first, as a responsible, dharmic king, and then walked away from it, instructed his sons on renunciation, and then walked away from himself and lived this unique life of renunciation. So this is his last verse. He says, The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Rishabhadev, was fully aware of his true identity. Therefore, he was self-sufficient. This is interesting, right? We use the term self-sufficient to talk about like farm communities or things like that.
Tiny homes.
Tiny homes. In
Yeah.
other words, all the energy and
Yeah,
everything
just
comes from.
living simple and yes.
Oh, I see. It's tiny little houses. You're saying, yeah. But here, self-sufficiency is meaning my happiness isn't dependent on anything external, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything that I need for happiness is right here. I can lie down. He was lying down on the ground like a python, right? Without, without endeavoring for even food. And he was saying, I can be happy just sitting in one spot. That, again, is an extreme type of yogic practice, but it's illustrating this point.
It's just like these kids with a giant toy box and they never play with the toys. It's just like toys everywhere. And it's just like the kid is just
The external thing they don't
not interested.
last long. Yeah.
They don't
Okay,
last.
so therefore he was self-sufficient because he was fully aware of his true identity. Therefore, he was self-sufficient. That's a potential that we all have, right? If we become aware of our true spiritual identity, we become self-sufficient. And he did not desire external gratification, right? Nothing from he didn't. There's nothing external, nothing outside of himself that he felt he needed to have a gratified life. There was no need for him to aspire for success, since he was complete in himself. Those who unnecessarily engage in bodily conceptions, right? I am this body, I'm born in this family, I'm from this country, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm black, I'm white, I'm et cetera, et cetera. Those who unnecessarily engage in bodily conceptions and create an atmosphere of materialism are always ignorant of their real self-interest. Out of his causeless mercy, Lord Rishabdeva taught that the self's real identity and the goal of out of his causeless mercy, Lord Rishabdev taught the self's real identity and the goal of life. We therefore offer our respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who appeared as Lord Rishabdev.
Nice.
Interesting. I mean, as I read this, I can't help but think of Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, right? I mean,
Yeah.
practically, you could just read this about him, you know?
Yeah.
He was a sannyasi. He didn't have possessions. He didn't have, even family in one sense. He had a devotional community that he was a part of, but he was simple and self-sufficient, right? He wasn't unnecessarily engaged in bodily conception, and he taught the self's real identity and the goal of life, and therefore we offer respects unto him. Yeah.
This whole book is a book of this situation. It's a story of Maharaj Prickett. He's also on his deathbed, and he's also choosing an attitude of how to deal with. I was cursed, right?
Yeah.
The origins of the story. I was cursed. What am I going to do about that? Am I going to hate
unfairly cursed? Right?
Unfairly cursed,
yeah.
Right? And he was he was in the midst of his life. He wasn't like an old man who's gone through all the stages of life. He's like, okay, I was cursed, and I'm okay with it. And this is how I'm going to leave this world.
Yeah.
I think the whole world has to read the Srimad Bhagavatam.
I think so.
I think it's good for the world.
Well, it's said that in the Kali Yuga that this book, this is the prophecy, right? That this book will shed light in this age. So I expect it to become more popular. Now, here's the commentary, right, by Srila Prabhupada. He said, this is the summary of this chapter in which the activities of Lord Rishabhadeva are described. Being the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, Lord Rishabhadeva is complete in himself. We living entities, as parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, should follow the instructions of Lord Rishabhadeva and become self-sufficient. Now, that there's something within that logic that Prabhupada just presented. Okay, he's saying that the Supreme Being, the origin of all existence, needs nothing outside of itself to be complete, to feel complete, right? In one sense, that's kind of what we're looking for in life, right? You could say meaning, like Viktor Frankl said, meaning. And you could say we desire to feel complete. Even like, what was it, that movie where like the guy's like, you complete me, he's turned to the girl, right? Like, you complete me. Like, I need something external to myself, and you are that. you are that external thing to myself that completes me. Without you, I'm incomplete. So whether it's a lover or whether it's an accomplishment, it may be fame. We may think I just need more money, then I'll be able to buy what I need, and then I will feel a sense of completeness. I'm incomplete until I come to that point. So here, the logic being presented is that God by nature is complete, is unlimited and complete, and that we are made of that same energy. Right? Here's the, we speak of that we are one with and different from God. Right? It's a to me, it's a very mature kind of synthesis. Right? Some people that are presenting spirituality are saying God is everything and we are nothing. Like God is like way up there. We are sinful, horrible, terrible beings by nature. We're born into it. And
Born sinful.
yeah, and as a matter of fact, there's nothing you can do about it
Yeah.
except that God can grant you mercy and just have that faith, and then you'll be saved. And then there's another, you swing the pendulum the other way. It's like we are God, right? There is nothing but me, you know, and I'm,
The
I'm.
light in me sees the light in you, Kostuba.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Well, there's no problem with that, but so in any case, but here's an idea that's saying that we are at one in one sense, we are the energy of God. We are made out of this Satchit Ananda energy. We are made out of this eternal, blissful, fully, deeply realized energy. That's who we are. That is our identity. It by nature, it feels complete, right? But we're out of touch with that because we're not God, because we're this little spark of energy that has been granted one power, as Viktor Frankl will say, right? We're granted some free will. We're granted some ability to choose our attitudes, where we place our faith, where we place our love.
And if you were to see yourself within that, Kostub, like Viktor Frankl, his situation, like it doesn't seem like he has any free will. It seems like you're in a prison. You're subject to whatever they tell you, whatever they feed you, however they treat you, however they treat the people you love. It seems like you have no free will. And it seems like it's our duty to excavate that free will because it's there, but it's in a very, it's so, it actually is so tiny. We even living in a free country and not incarcerated, and I can, grow or purchase my own organic vegetables. Still, there are certain type of shackles that we don't even see that are holding us back. Some karma that we have that we're, but within even that karma, and the very, very crystal clear, lucid version of that is some like Viktor Frankl, who's in this horrible situation. He's got this ability to choose, and that's impressive.
It's very impressive.
It's very
It's kind
impressive.
of like putting the theory to the test,
Right.
in such an extreme sense. But yeah, what a beautiful mystery of life to contemplate. The idea that on one hand, I'm tiny and limited, and on the other hand, I'm spiritual, I'm eternal, I'm unlimited. You know, I'm limited in the sense that I'm one small living being amongst unlimited living beings, and it's not that whatever I desire necessarily manifests in this world. I'm bound in so many ways, but in another sense, right? I'm eternal, right? And that's not bound. In another sense, my ability to love is unbound, or it can be, at least, right? When in my Svarūp city, right? In my when I realize who I am. Okay, so Prabhupada goes on. He says, we living entities are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and so we should follow the instructions of Lord Rishabhdev and become self-sufficient. We should not. Here comes the advice, right? We should not create unnecessary demands due to the bodily conception. So much in that sentence, you can try, right? Like, due to my bodily conception, due to my misidentification with this body, I think certain things are necessary that aren't necessary. Right. I think I need to be perceived in a particular way. I don't need to be perceived. I think there's certain dangers that are there because of those dangers really only exist in your mind, fears, it's so much, we should not create unnecessary demands. If I'm this body and certain things satisfy my body, then I must get those things. No, you could let go of those things, right? And instead of spending life chasing external things, you could let go of that false bodily conception and go within. So we should not create unnecessary demands due to the bodily conception. When one is self-realized, they are sufficiently satisfied due to being situated in their original position. And then Prabhupada quotes this verse that we mentioned yesterday, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 1854, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma, Nasochati, Nakangshati. Right. That when one achieves the stage of Brahma Bhuta, when one realizes I am Brahman, I'm not this body, I'm not any of these external roles, I am made of spiritual energy, then Prasanatma, right? One becomes satisfied, one becomes peaceful, one becomes happy. And in that stage, no sochati, no kangshati. As far as external things, both past and future, you let go of those. Hankering, lamentation, you release all that. This is the goal of all living entities. Okay, Prabhupada established a goal, right? We talk about what is success, right? Here's a definition for you, right? This is the goal of all living, that I give up all hankering and lamentation. There's a goal for all living entities.
This everything we were saying yesterday about living in the future, living in the past, being here now. This is it right in here. This is it. There is nothing ever. I mean, you don't have kids, so you don't know what it's like, but you don't have a basement, so you don't know what it's like. But the basement's filled with, for those who have children in a basement, for those who keep their children in the basement. Now, for those who have kids and a basement, there's cupboards. I have lots of cupboards that have lots of crates. And in those crates are various art projects that you just don't want to throw away. They did time on your refrigerator, and then they're like got moved to somewhere else, and then they got moved to that crate in the basement. And each kid gets their own crate. And it's sort of like, am I ever going to go through these things ever? Or is it one day when I go through these? But it's almost like our whole life is crates in a basement. We store memories, and we right. We store memories.
Our whole life
should have been. Yeah, and sometimes it's not like a joyful thing, like a handprint made in clay from your son, so, when they were 5 years old. Sometimes it's like, yeah, that time I was cheated. I'm going to store that in a crate. Or that time that person broke my heart, I'm going to store that in a crate. Or that time, or just like some other tragedy. This day, like my mom, I was saying about fire yesterday, the day my house, she had a fire in her house, and like that's stored, and she relives that on a regular basis. Every time there's a birthday candle lit, my mother's goes right to the fire, So it's like just crates and crates of stuff, good memories, bad memories, charming memories, devastating memories. And then, of course, there's hoping in the future. And it's this constant projecting forward and projecting backwards that cheats us out of our reality right now. And this is again and again the goading and the encouraging that the Bhagavatam is bringing us to. It's actually the science of how to be here now. With Krishna. Yesterday we said we don't want to just be here now. That's boring. We want to be here now with Krishna, right?
Okay. So Prabhupada continues. Even though one may be situated within this material world, they can become fully satisfied and devoid of hankering and lamentation, simply by following the instructions of the Lord as set forth in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. These two books really simplify it and bring it to its conclusive, bring the yoga teachings to their conclusion, because they lead ultimately towards bhakti. Satisfaction through self-realization is called svarūpānanda, the bliss of being situated in one's true nature.
Svarūpānanda.
The conditioned soul, eternally sleeping in darkness, does not understand their self-interest.
Wow. That's a powerful statement, huh?
Statements.
Read that again, sir. Read that again. I'm going to make a post on Canva that says that. You should put that on your on the Wisdom of the Sages Instagram today. Say it again. Here it is.
Conditioned soul.
Drop a heart if you like this.
The conditioned soul, eternally sleeping in darkness, does not understand their own self-interest. Yeah.
We are our own worst enemies, aren't we?
They simply try to become. Now here, this is. Let's put it together with the next sentence, right?
This is tomorrow's post. Ready? Go.
Okay. The conditioned soul, eternally sleeping in darkness, does not understand their self-interest. They simply try to become happy by making material adjustments. But this is impossible. Okay, now that statement, you see, like, again, we're going right back to Viktor Frankl
And Sting.
Sting. I don't know.
There is no material
Okay.
solution.
I was thinking James Allen, but yes, Sting too. Okay. One could interpret that saying that you cannot become happy by making material adjustments. So what? We're not supposed to do anything in this world. We're not supposed to right the wrongs or take difficult
Or
situations and
turn
make
the
them
heat
better.
up if it's cold.
Yeah, or help people that are suffering.
Yeah.
Right?
Or feed yourself when you're hungry. That, you can really argue this statement. Go.
Well, here's the point. It's not saying that one shouldn't do that, but it's saying that one should do that within a broader context. And that if we don't, let me try to make the best possible adjustments in this material world, not with the idea that I need them to be happy or that any material adjustment brings real, true, deep happiness to anyone. No, we want to relieve as much suffering in this world as we can, and we'll make external steps to do that. But we should do it all within the broader context of understanding where the true, lasting, deep welfare of every living being lies. And that lies in their understanding who they are, right? In their own self-realization. So if our solutions to material problems are not within that context of self-realization, the results will be very temporary at best. Commonly, the results will be counteractive. Like what we send out to the world just manifests in a different way, or it becomes like that whack-a-mole principle. We move to change things over here, and the same problem pops up over there, or a new problem pops up over there, and we
Sure.
actually never solve the problem. Thinking like this reminds me a lot of like the Ayurveda medicine, the wisdom behind Ayurveda, right?
Sure.
Which is saying, let's step back and look at this entire system and understand how this whole thing balances out. Because I'm not trying to obviously modern medicine is important, and I'm not denying its importance, but I'm saying I often find a certain blindness there in it, right? Wherein the cure can be as bad as the disease, or can cause the disease just as bad as what you're trying to cure.
A simple example is you're overeating a lot, or you're drinking Coca-Cola and pizza on a regular basis, and all of a sudden you get this acid indigestion. Okay. A natural thing when you're eating things that can't be digested easily, your body gives you extra acid to break it down. What do we do with that? Because it causes discomfort. Antacid. We take an anti-acid. Right. We're actually, God's giving us this gift to break down the toxins. We've done so much inappropriate consumption. So God gives us this extra gift, this acid, and then we neutralize the acid.
Right. The body sends you a message, right, that says, hey, you're not eating properly.
Right.
You ignore that, and you say, let me deal with the symptoms and let me not get to the root of the problem. And that's the whole point here, right, is that what Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are saying is, it's not saying don't make adjustments in this world, but it's saying understand the root of the problem. That's most important. If you don't address the root problem, then the problems keep popping up, or we get into the whack. I was thinking principle, different examples. This is something that's spoken about later in the Bhagavatam, in the seventh canto, when Prahlad is speaking to Lord Nrsingadev, right? And this would be a really important area that we study in Bhagavatam, where the what is it, 8-year-old Prahlad, little boy, I forget, or even younger. How old was Prahlad when he was speaking? 5 or something like that? I forget.
It seems young.
He was very young.
He was pretty smart,
but he was
smart.
Powerful truths, right?
Yeah.
And so he's speaking. This is what he says. He says, because of the combination of pleasing and displeasing circumstances, right? That's the nature of this world, right? One thing is pleasing, and the next minute it's unpleasing, or we're shifting. We're trying to find pleasing circumstances. We're trying to avoid displeasing circumstances. But the nature of this world is that it's a constant moving between pleasing and displeasing, pleasing and displeasing. We're trying to say, let me adjust things so that it's always pleasing. But that's not the nature of this world. So you might make an adjustment to make what's displeasing no longer a problem. but then something displeasing pops up somewhere else. You can't get away from it.
Sure. You know where
So-
it's really like this? New York City, like
Okay.
office buildings in the summer.
Yes.
You just go in there. It's like freezing. It's like I have to wear I have to wear winter coats to work. Come on. I have to dress for winter at work. It just
summer
disturbs me.
because you don't have like a normal situation where you open the window.
You're not allowed to open windows in New York. That's too dangerous.
Yeah.
That's too much of a liability.
So
or hotels are like that too. You don't stay in hotels, but you know what I mean. It's sort of like you can't open the windows. You can't light incense. It stinks in there. Can't light incense. Can't open the windows. And it's like freezing in the hotel room. You're trying to adjust it. Just give me what's outside and maybe a little better. How about that?
Okay.
Give me what's outside and a little better.
Like a fan.
Yeah.
Okay. So because of combination with pleasing and displeasing circumstances, and because of separation from them, right? So I have them one moment and then I'm separated from them. So even I got the pleasing circumstances, then I become separated from it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So because of combination with pleasing and displeasing circumstances, and because of separation from them, one is placed in a most regrettable position within the heavenly and hellish planets, right? Within this world, from top to bottom of the universe, wherever you go, there's this shifting between pleasing and displeasing, no matter what you do.
Right. I mean, we see that in our life. How are you today? I'm displeased. How are you today? I'm pleased.
Yeah.
It's just our life is
And if you're pleased
shifting.
today, displeasure is coming.
It's around the corner.
It's around the corner. So he says, because of this, it is as if they're burning in a fire of lamentation.
I thought this podcast was going to make me happier all the time.
Well, you know what, Raghunath? That sounds heavy. Now, then he says this. He says, although there are many remedies by which to get out of miserable life, any such remedies in the material world are more miserable than the miseries themselves. Right? Either the cure is miserable, or the cure brings on another type of misery, like a whack-a-mole thing. You knock it down here, it pops up there. He says,
Sure.
therefore, and this is nice how he says this, therefore, I think the only remedy is to engage in your service. Kindly instruct me in such service. But the Sanskrit here is, he says, aham bhumam brahmami vadame tava dasya yogam. Right? He's saying that, oh great one, I'm wandering, brahmami. I'm wandering in this, in this world of happiness one moment and suffering in the next moment. So Vada, please instruct me. Vada may, please instruct me. The tava of your dasya yogam, of your yoga of service, right? Of your yoga of service. That this is the only answer, right? This is the solution that's not whack-a-mole. That you push it down here and it pops up over there. Is to accept my true identity. By nature, I serve. Why? Because by nature, I love. That is who I am. And it's only, and the whole world is going to keep sending problems at me and suffering at me until I get this point. Until I understand. All the problems are meant to help me understand this point, that by nature I serve with love. Recover that, reestablish that.
Whack-a-mole is such a great example, isn't it?
It is.
I'm sure there's people out there who have no idea what we're talking about. Whack-a-mole.
Well,
it's like a little mole. It's a little mole game. It's a little game you play where you get a little hammer and a mole pops up and you whack it and it disappears and another one comes in. You're trying to chase this mole around.
I'll give you an example of whack-a-mole, right? An example of where like the solution causes the next problem, right? Where the cure becomes worse than the disease. So have you ever heard of the 4 Pests campaign?
4 Pests?
Yes, the 4 Pests campaign. This was something that was dreamt up by Chairman Mao, all right, in China.
Oh, he was a mess.
So the 4 Pests campaign was one of the first actions taken in the, quote, Great Leap Forward in China from 1958 to 1962. So this was the idea that Chairman Mao felt that the sparrows were eating too much of the grain, right? So this was the problem, right? People need grain to eat, and sparrows are eating the grain that could go to people. Therefore, he ordered all sparrows killed, right?
Okay.
So the four pests were sparrows, mosquitoes, flies, and rats. The
Oof.
extermination of sparrows is also known as the Smash Sparrows campaign or the Eliminate Sparrows campaign. And the result of this was, yeah, they and like people would be encouraged to kill sparrows wherever they children were, they're piling up thousands and
Kill those
thousands
sparrows.
of sparrows. As a result, the locust population exploded since sparrows ate locusts. And
He
countless.
swallowed the cat to catch the mouse.
Well, this is even
Swallowed the dog to catch the cat. I don't
that's
know
how
why.
things, increase in complication. But this one had like an instant reaction. Countless crops were destroyed. Famine raged for years. 25 million people died, possibly more.
40 to 80 million victims through the Mao's rule.
Yeah. So there's that's like one very graphic example of like, oh, we have a problem. Here's a solution. The solution causes the cure is worse than the disease, right?
Yeah, that's a whack-a-mole.
That's the idea of whack-a-mole. Okay, so Prahlad Maharaj is also seeing that, right? The cure is often worse than the disease. In Ayurveda, we often see that it's the idea is, hey, if you don't get this, if you don't go to the root, my wife, she just studies Ayurveda and she's understanding more and more. Like someone will come back from a visit to some Ayurvedic clinic or visit or something, and she'll be able to understand quickly like how real this thing is. Like if they come back and they don't have an understanding of what their problem is, like the doctor's supposed to explain to you, here's why you're suffering the way you're suffering, not just like, here's my way to stop the symptom of your suffering, but let me help you understand why the symptom arose in the first place, and then let's address that. And the problem is that most of us aren't willing to address those things, like often
because they take a little bit of time. They take a little bit of time
Our
to
lifestyles
overcome
may make it
it's a
difficult.
lifestyle.
It may have but it may be like, you need to slow down. Like your lifestyle, is running too fast. You have too many hours of work. Well, I can't leave my job, so I guess I won't be able to follow this. And then
I want a pill. I want
becomes
something
chronic.
quick. How can I get rid of this quick?
Yeah.
Right. That takes a moment to take that pill. I don't even have to look at it. I just put it in my mouth and swallow it down. A lifestyle change, that's a whole nother thing. I have to rearrange things. I have to reprioritize my life.
And the lifestyle change won't bring further problems, but the pill, it may address the symptoms, but
there's a slight side effect with this pill.
People take this 50 things, right?
People they cause suicide. There's pills that cause suicide.
Right. Okay, so now back to our original commentary with Srila Prabhupada. He says, the conditioned soul, this is what we're reading, right? The conditioned soul eternally sleeping in darkness does not understand their self-interest. They simply try to become happy by making material adjustments, but this is impossible, right? That's the Prabhupada's point is here. You're not going to solve your deeper existential issues by making material adjustments. You have to go back and say, who am I? This is, we see this when Sanatana Goswami, when he meets Lord Chaitanya. Now he was this learned man. He was this person with this huge government responsibility. He was respected, successful, you could say. But when he finally saw Sri Chaitanya, he said, I don't even know who I am. I'm suffering in this world, and I don't even know who I am. Instruct me in that. And then come the beautiful teachings of Sambandha Gyana that we find in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? So yeah, we're not gonna solve our deeper existential issues by simple material adjustments. So he continues. It is therefore said in Srimad Bhagavatam, Nate vitu svarta gatim hi Vishnum. Due to gross ignorance, the conditioned soul does not know that their real self-interest is to take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. To try to become happy by adjusting the material atmosphere is a useless endeavor. Right? Prabhupada's speaking from that broader context now, right? Again, he's not saying he did so much to try to relieve people's sufferings, and he made so many material adjustments in this world, but he did it within the broader context of understanding what is the root of the problem, and that's where he focused his efforts, right? To try to become happy by adjusting the material atmosphere is a useless endeavor. Indeed, it is impossible. By his personal behavior and instructions, Lord Rishabhadeva enlightened the conditioned soul and showed them how to become self-sufficient in their spiritual identity. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 5th canto, 6th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Activities of Lord Rishabhadeva.
Ooh, got a new chapter coming up. Activities of King Bart, the Emperor of the whole world. That's coming up soon.
The whole
tomorrow.
Bhart, I don't know, 3 or 4 chapters about Bhart.
Mm.
More than that, maybe 5 or 6. I forget. There's so many great instructions coming in those chapters. So I'm looking forward
Instruct
to
me. Instruct me.
We will read it. You
All
know,
right.
and I was just going to say, you know, maybe, yeah, but we have a few minutes left. But, you know, like when Prabhupada says those kind of things, like this is impossible through material adjustment to find happiness and so on, or speaking, you know, just I was thinking, you know, to many people that may sound negative, it may sound dark, it may sound, come on. But really, this is where we find this kind of wisdom in all of those great traditions of Eastern wisdom, right? Like the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism. Do you know the Four Noble Truths, Ragnar?
I don't. I know of them. I've heard of them.
Well,
I used to know them.
The idea
Forgot
was
them.
Okay, we're gonna share them right now. But you know,
Compassion. Is compassion one of them?
no.
Okay, forget
But
it.
you might be moving on to the 8. You know, there's something that comes after that, like the 8.
It's Buddhist Kastuba. I haven't heard this. Okay, go
Well,
with this.
the idea was that Buddha was like, there was a prophecy, but he was like a prince, like in a Hindu family. And there's a prophecy about him that if he ever witnesses suffering, he'll leave the world behind and become a famous spiritual teacher. And his father didn't want that, so he kept him sheltered, you know, up until he was 29 years old. He would like never leave the palace practically, you know, and or even if he did, it was very controlled. His external circumstances are very controlled, so that he wouldn't witness suffering. But one day, like
he ventured outside the gate.
He ventured outside the gate. He witnessed suffering for the first time, and he heard about asceticism, and so probably very similar to the teachings of Rishabhadeva, you know. And he began to practice them, practice fasting, practice deep meditation, and he came out of that meditation with 4 noble truths. Right. The first one, life is suffering. Right. That's it. You know, he looked.
There you go. Take that. There's your shirt.
Yeah.
There's your
life is
shirt.
Suffering, you know.
Wisdom of the Sages, Life is Suffering podcast.
And then the next one is the cause of the suffering is craving.
Craving. Your desires cause you suffering.
Material desires, right? They cause you.
Stop craving things, you craver.
The end of suffering comes with the end to the craving. Right? We need to. This is what yoga means. Let me address my desires. Let me address my inner. In my inner workings, not my like Viktor Frankl is saying, right? I might not be able to change the external circumstances, but I need to really look within and see, examine my mind, examine my attachments, examine my attitudes. That's where my freedom lies.
Have you ever heard of make love, not war? Mine is rave, not crave.
Rave, not crave.
Rave, not crave.
Okay.
Just rave.
What do you mean by rave?
Like raver dance, have fun.
Okay.
With other people in cool jeans. That's what I mean.
I think they may be craving too.
Craving. Okay.
And then the 4th noble truth, there is a path which leads one away from craving and suffering. Right?
There's a path that leads one away from craving and suffering.
So we kind of accept all that too, but we also accept that there is a spiritual craving, right? And it's actually the spiritual craving is the path that leads one away from the material craving. All
right, that's good. Those are some good last minute takeaways. Rave, don't crave. No, I'm just kidding. The 4 noble truths, those are good things to have.
Mara, do we have any takeaways? I think.
Yeah, I got a lot of takeaways today. Okay. Good stuff. If your cause is making you hate, you lose.
You lose. Cause.
Okay. We want to improve our circumstances without improving ourselves.
Doesn't work.
Yep.
Don't love religion more than people.
I'll accept that.
Yeah, I like that.
Not quite a t-shirt, Raghunath. Got to keep working on it.
Don't love your religion more than people. Yes.
This one might be a little long for a t-shirt, but become aware of your true identity to become self-sufficient.
Maybe if you wrote on the sleeves,
Yeah,
like a long sleeve one.
there we go. Our ability to love can be unbound.
It can be.
That
It is.
Sort of a t-shirt
Release
too.
Yeah.
Got
Give
too
up.
much love.
Give up hankering and lamentation for real success.
Okay.
Craven. Turn and face this jeans craven. Watch how you rock and rollers.
Our remedies are worse than our miseries.
Often.
Often, mole.
We can't solve our existential problems with material adjustments.
Impossible.
Don't be a mole.
Understand and address the root of the problem.
Okay.
Address.
And our whole life is crates in a basement.
Crates in a basement. We're crates in a basement.
Sorry, I didn't do rave. Don't crave.
Crates in a basement. It is true, isn't it? That makes me sad now. I don't want to end on that note, but that's our whole life. It's a bunch of crates in the basement with the kid's name on it. Big box of pictures. Big box of pictures. Ugh. Well, have a good day, everybody. Thanks for joining us here in the morning. It's nice to do it. It's nice. Come on Zoom. We'll see you on Zoom. Right, Mara, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. She'll give you the Zoom code. Look at each other. Write each other's secret messages. I get thousands of secret messages per show, Kostuba. How many do you get?
I'm not telling you.
Thousands of private red, come to the red message. Ragana. Thousands of them. I have to save them all and read them like I read a novel after the show. How many do you get?
Sounds like they're crates in a basement.
Anyway, everybody, thanks for supporting us and what we do. We got a great retreat coming up in Italy. If you ever wanted to go to Italy and hang out with a bunch of Italians, you can do that.
Priya's here too.
Kishore Priya, direct from Italy, transported to Slovenia. We miss you, Kishore Priya.
Materilist still wearing that wristband.
Materilist?
Yeah, I've seen others still wearing it. That's like 8 months later or something like that. It's incredible.
Very interesting guy there. We got a big group today. Anyway. All right. I got some kids to get to school and breakfast to make. You're very beautiful, people. I'm going to go and do my thing. And I'll see you tomorrow at this time. Namaste. You're beautiful. Let the magic continue to flood your life.